My next two guests on what I hope will be a regular monthly segment that I'll call the Writer's Circle, probably. This segment features two incredible writers that have recently been published from Roadside Press. Lori Jakiela is the author of 7 books. Most recently, a memoir, They Write Your Name on a Grain of Rice, on cancer, love, and living, even so, from Atticus Books. Another memoir, Belief is Its Own Kind of Truth, Maybe, from Autumn House Press, received the Sarowan Prize for International Literature from Stanford University. Lori's essay collection, Portrait of the Artist as a Bingo Worker, on Work and the Writing Life, from Bottom Dog Press, has been adopted as a common text at Westmoreland Community College for the past 2 years. Many of the essays in Allskate, True Stories from Middle Life, have been published in places like Pittsburgh Magazine, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the Washington Post, Volume 1, Brooklyn, Journal of the Plague Years, Pulse, and more. Her other work has appeared in the New York Times Modern Love column, the Chicago Tribune, Brevity Creative Nonfiction, Full Grown People, The Rumpus, and more. Her author website is www.lorijakiela.net. That's Lori, Lori, Jakiela, Jakiela.net. Her book, Allskate, True Stories from the Middle Life, is available from Roadside Press. Dave Newman is the author of 9 books, including the story collection She Throws Herself Forward to Stop the Fall from Roadside Press 2024, and How to Live Life Like Lipo in Pittsburgh, Essays from a Writing Life, J. New Books 2024. His collection, The Slaughterhouse Poems, White Gorilla Press 2013, was named one of the best books of the year by Elle magazine. He was a finalist for the Rattle Poetry Prize and won the Reader's Choice Award in 2024. His poems, essays, and stories have appeared in magazines and journals around the world, including Ambit in the United Kingdom, Tears in the Fence in the United Kingdom, Gulfstream, Belt, and the legendary Nerve Cowboy. He appeared in the PBS documentary narrated by Rick Sevick about Pittsburgh writers. Winner of numerous awards, including the Andre Dubus Novella Prize, he lives in Trafford, Pennsylvania, the last town in the Electric Valley, with his wife, the writer Lori Jakiela. After a decade of working in medical research, he currently teaches in the Creative and Professional Writing program at the University of Pittsburgh-Greensburg, his alma mater. She Throws Herself Forward to Stop the Fall, Dave's new poetry collection, is available from Roadside Press. Please welcome my esteemed guests. Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Newman and Jakiela, all the way from Trafford, Pennsylvania. Some longtime writers, very accomplished writers, that I have actually looked up to over the last couple of years. And thanks for joining me, guys.
Thanks for having
us.
I guess I'll just ask a couple questions to start. Jakiela, ladies first. Recently had a book, Allskate, True Stories from Midlife. See, I fucked up already. Allskate, True Stories from Middle Life. That just recently dropped, I think, right?
Yep. Yes. This
on Roadside,
a couple days ago. Yeah.
A couple days ago?
Yeah.
Have you had cake yet?
No cake, but I did have candy cigarettes.
That's probably...
Which, I mean, that's... when else can you whip out the candy cigarettes but for a new book, right? That's important.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask kind of both of you, actually. So, Lori, is this your 8th book?
This is, yeah.
Compared to like your first and second book release, how does it feel to have your 8th book?
It's always lovely. And there's always that feeling like right before it, you're worried nobody's going to come, everybody's going to hate it. So that never really goes away. But this book release was in a small space. It's a bookstore that was owned by a former student of mine. And so it really just felt really homey and nice and very much middle life, right? Like this is, it just felt warm and good. And so it was not so much like the giant crowd that you want or that sort of thing. It was like just being in a warm space with good people, and having some candy cigarettes together, which is,
Nice.
Smoke them if you got them, and we did.
That's it. I didn't even know they make candy cigarettes still.
Yeah. Oh.
just going back down the retro lane to childhood, I found Jolt Cola.
Oh
On,
yeah,
you can order that on the internet still. So we ordered some when I was at the factory, and we all drank it one day at lunch. Just for old time's sake.
Does
nice.
it does it give the Red Bull vibes? Like, is it hold up to that?
I can't believe it's terrible. It's
Yeah,
Okay.
disgusting.
it's like flat. I remember it not having many bubbles.
It's definitely got a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
Something I didn't care about until I got a little older.
Right.
Uh, and so I'm here with Jakiela and Newman. Newman, they're actually a married couple.
Yep.
Both of them, Jakiela just had her eighth book released. Newman is about to release his 10th book.
Yeah.
'Cause your bios say 7 books and yours says 9 books, but then the new book's at the end. So I was
Yeah.
like, I think this will be, yeah. So
Just
you
a
have,
literary math.
Newman has 2 books on Roadside. Your last one was She Throws Herself Forward to Stop the Fall.
Yep.
And then he has a new book of poetry releasing soon
Yep. Some June.
in June.
Yep.
Better than the best American poetry.
Yes. Fucking with the better than the best American poetry.
10 books.
10 books.
How does it feel for you when you release a book now? Then,
I still get excited, and it's weird. I get really excited, even though I think like the general public does doesn't care about literature in general, but especially poetry. But it excites me to get a book of poems into the world still. I just love it, and I love going out and reading it. And if you publish a novel, that's awesome. But when you read it, you got to make sure the audience understands what part you're reading from, and you got to excerpt it. And poems, you just get up and you can change whatever you're doing in the middle of the reading, and so it's a lot of fun.
hmm uh, yeah, having written novels and poetry. It's definitely a different. You
Different
know,
vibe. Yeah.
poetry's more my jam, but you got to write. You got to read from the novels too. So you have a book coming in June. Jakiela has one that just released. Um, I had. Let me start with Jakiela. Let me start with Newman on this one. Uh, how long ago did you start writing?
So I was one of those, like I said, I grew up in an evangelical Christian household. We were all born agains, and so reading was really kind of discouraged. And I read 2 books till I got out of high school. I read The Outsiders in 5th grade, and my mom kind of like scoffed at it because it wasn't the Bible, which was the only book we had in the house. And then I read Jim Morrison's the biography of Jim Morrison, No One Here Gets Out Alive, in 6th grade, and didn't read again until college and stuff. But I always like wrote poems, like, but they were just influenced by like song lyrics and whatever was popular at the time. And so it didn't really occur to me until much later someone gave me a book of poems. I'm like, oh, none of this matters if I'm not reading. So that was, so the writing was always there, but it really changed once I started reading when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah. When did your first book get published?
I think I was 40. So I think I published like my first poem when I was 22 and my first book not till I was 40. So there was like a big gap in time where I was just like, it's right around the corner, right around the year, right around the decade, just kept hoping, but it finally happened.
Nice. Jakiela, when did you start writing?
As far back as I can remember, I always, played with words. I remember being absolutely furious my first day of kindergarten and coming home and just being disgusted that they didn't teach me how to read for myself, because I would always have to beg my parents or my grandmother to read, and they would get tired, and my grandmother would say, "I don't have my glasses," and so I started thinking like. If you had glasses, they were magic, and then you could read if you had glasses. But I just wanted to learn how to read, and I wanted to learn how, to put words down, like as far back as I can remember. It's also like one of the only things I could do. I was a pretty sickly child, not athletic. Books, magazines, Mad Magazine, those kinds of things were, my early inspirations. And my parents were really working class. We didn't have a lot of books in the house, but I do remember this like incredible act of love that my father did. An encyclopedia salesman came to the door one day, and my dad bought a whole set of what was it? The Wonderland of Knowledge encyclopedias, and he built a bookcase and covered them in glass, and it was precious. And I read my way through those, and I read the dictionary. Yeah, and so I really it just always was there. And I don't know what that is. I always joke. Our son, when he was 6 months old, he started speaking like sentences at 6 months, and I thought, oh, language gives us power when we feel powerless, right? As kids, and maybe something to that. had some reason why I was really determined. But yeah. But I got glasses since then, and they really don't change your reading life at all. So
Uh, so did you like, unlike Newman, did you like want to be a writer from a young age? Like, did you kind of?
yeah, yeah. I mean, but I grew up, in a really working class, like blue collar environment. So I told people I would be a journalist, which is what I went to undergrad for, and I was a journalist, still am, here and there. But I told them that because people could understand that that was a job because they knew Barbara Walters, and so they're like, "Okay, well, you can do that. That's a real job," as opposed to say, what I eventually ended up doing is going to grad school for poetry. Thank God I didn't have to pay for it because they would have been like, "What are you doing?" But there was no other real way to talk about wanting to be a writer than to say it was tangible work that could be respected in the world somehow. I mean, we could talk about how journalists are treated now, but back then, it was a real thing. So, yeah, they supported that, but the rest of it they thought was a little nuts. I know you said you were adopted, and I was too, and so my family always thought I was a little strange because of that. Like they didn't know where I came from, so but they did tolerate it pretty well.
Uh, yeah, I tell people I love to like, you work in, I've worked in blue collar environments my whole life,
Mhm.
and you tell people they're like, "What do you do?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm a poet," and they're like,
Oh,
"That's a thing." But
yeah.
like when I travel to like Albuquerque or like Los Angeles, and you meet people in these like where there's real artists living, and they're like, "What do you do?" And you're like, "You're a poet." They're like, "Oh, far out, man." It's
Right.
like
Yeah.
it's a whole different. Like I didn't even know that could be a thing. Like nobody told me. uh, did you have any like influential books as a child? I know Newman mentioned The Outsiders, which was a childhood favorite of mine, by the way.
Yeah.
Did you have any books as a child that you really enjoyed, or?
Oh, I enjoyed The Outsiders, all the usual things, but my absolute favorite and highly inappropriate childhood reading memory is I'm old enough. We used to have these barrels of books at a place called GC Murphy, and they would tear the covers off, so you get like five for $1. You just reach in and grab whatever you want. And I reached in and I grabbed five books and I brought them home, and one was by Judy Blume, who is a wonderful children's writer. But I happened to snag a copy of Wifey, which is not a children's book. And I loved that I got a hold of this thing. And I always sort of was drawn to like the darker kids' books too, like the Flowers in the Attic series, things like that. But this was a whole new world. And I knew enough, that I should hide it under my bed, which I did. But I also knew that my parents, even though they didn't read a lot, they probably knew who Judy Blume was, Amelia Bedelia. So I thought I'm still pretty cool, even if they find this, it's going to be a keeper. But yeah, I think it really influenced me as a writer to know things that I shouldn't know about the world before I should know them. Yeah.
That was luckily like like I said, I had, I told you before we started recording, I had kind of my escape as a child at the library.
Yeah.
Like at a very young age, I discovered that the library has some wild books. And like unsupervised in the library was pretty wild growing up.
Did your
Yes.
mom never peek in, or mom or dad never peeked in to see what you were reading?
No, so my mom actually spent most of my childhood like at a state psych ward,
Okay.
and my dad like actually was illiterate, so he couldn't read. And
Right.
so I basically, they tried, but I had like free run.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You're like, it's a Christian novel.
yeah, and so I remember in high school, my mom found like some pretty like I had some like porn magazines they found,
Right.
but there was also like I think I had a Dennis Rodman autobiography. We played for the Bulls, and I grew up in Illinois. Of course,
Right.
I read, but I remember she was like, "Oh," and it was the one. It was the one where he was on the cover in a woman's dress of all things. And this is evangelical Christianity. So not only did I get caught with porn, I also got caught with the drag queen. Like, to a lot of things.
All the good stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
and they burned my books in the magazines too.
Oh, wow.
oh,
They literally took them out in the back and had a bonfire and like.
oh
uh,
no.
But
Like back then, you could have sold at least the porno mags for like $12 to a buddy.
oh yeah, yeah, different world
Those were a
today.
hot commodity.
Yeah, those are the things I hid under my mattress, which wasn't a smart place because they always found it.
I
Yeah,
know.
totally.
Why would we hide things under the mattress? Everyone knows that's where you look.
And it's like every kid, like, trust me, as a parent, it's like generation to generation. We never, as humans, we have not evolved to learn this because my
Right.
kids have got, it's their place too. I bet it's something like with our evolution of like nesting or something is where we
Oh,
sleep. Where we come
No one will find
in.
it here.
Uh, getting back on track, Jakiela, right? I'm saying that
Yes.
right.
Yep.
When did your first book get published?
2006.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, were you writing like you were a journalist, so were you writing columns and stuff before that, and then
Yeah, I was. I mean, so I took a really weird route. So I went to school for poetry. I was writing poetry. Then I went and joined the airlines for 7 years and didn't really write anything other than notes on the back of bar napkins. And my poems seemed broken. They were really long lines. And then I started realizing I was writing essays, but I was writing essays that were nonfiction, so I could publish them in newspapers and magazines, things like that. Um, and then I got a job teaching, which I shouldn't have gotten because I was completely unqualified, but whatever. And they asked me, what are you going to do for tenure? You have to write a book. And I said, I'm going to write a memoir. And I had no idea what I was saying at all. And Newman worked at a bookstore at that time, and he just started feeding me books of memoir. And I was like, I stuck myself into this hole. I've got to figure it out. And so that's really how it happened. So they were essays that had morphed from poems that became a memoir because I had to make a book. So yeah, so it was kind of a roundabout way of doing it. But then I realized that was the form that I really love um, a
your
lot.
first book was a memoir?
It was, yeah.
Wow, that seems intimidating.
Yeah, it's called Miss New York Has Everything, which is a title that I've grown to regret. Um, but yeah, it's a memoir, but mostly a memoir and connected essays, that kind of thing.
she has
Okay.
a great essay about giving a reading at a Sam's Club, and they got confused and this saying instead of Miss New York, they just put Miss America for her, and like dudes were coming coming to see her to meet Miss America instead of to buy her book.
Yeah, it was on a huge used car lot sign, my name. Come meet me, Miss America. Yeah, it
Wow.
didn't go well, but it made for good writing.
Yeah. So you
Humiliation works.
what? Do you guys both do like are like regular readings now, or is it just something you do when books come out? Or
I do pretty regular readings. Yeah. Um, summer conferences, things like that.
yeah.
Newman
Uh,
tries to get out of them because he's more modest, but
I'm not modest, I'm shy. I'm not a great.
uh, well, let me start this question with you because that was going to lead to this next question. Jakiela, what is your writing process like? So as an example, when I asked for that, like Stephen King teaches, like sit down in the morning and sit 4 to 6 hours and don't move till you write.
oh dear
That
God.
would never work for me. Like,
No,
what do
no.
you write?
Yeah, I mean, I tell my students to do all the things that I don't do, you know. Might be one of them to have a regular writing practice. But I mean, mostly, I mean, because Newman and I have been together 25 years, we have 2 kids. We've developed a strange process that people might think is strange anyway. We sit down together at a table, any chance we get, which is usually now weekends, and we work. And we work together, usually like side by side or cross, um, and try to shut the world out as much as we can. But, like if you have kids and life and work and, parents you're caring for and laundry and, the idea of sitting down with for 4 straight hours every day and just, blocking out that time is impossible. To me, it's like you do it when you can do it, when you can do it. And, luckily for me, I just feel really supported when I sit down too, that, you know, because if you're married to someone who doesn't understand that, they're gonna be like, what are you doing? Like, it's Friday night, it's Saturday night. Why are you sitting with your head in the computer and not talking to anyone? But yeah, so
Yeah.
Newman can speak more to that too.
Oh, that was going to be my.
Yeah.
I was going to end before I asked you guys to read what it was like as a writer couple, but you kind of answered that. Newman, your writing process?
So like, I used to actually have a pretty good routine. I worked at the VA for like a decade, and it's only like 15 miles from our house, but it's like we have a tunnel going into Pittsburgh that shuts everything down. So I got in the habit of getting up at 4 in the morning to beat traffic, and then I would drive to the VA and I would write at my desk for an hour and a half before anyone else arrived at the hospital. I worked in the research center, which is kind of right behind the hospital. So I had this just great routine and privacy. There was nobody in the building. I could hear the elevator open when people started to come in. I knew it was time to close my documents and get to work. But so that was really great. And then with that, we've always worked on Saturday nights together. I think we just decided when the kids were young that we would play with them and play Jenga or something like that, and then send them on their own way. And we'd go back and try to get some writing done. And we've kind of stuck with that for years.
Nice. You both have mentioned, and this is the blue collar guy in me has loved this. But you mentioned yesterday when we met somewhere else, Newman, that you started out as an over the road truck driver.
Yeah. So I
And
like, good.
no, you go ahead.
I just so like I finished my undergraduate degree. I got a job as a janitor. I was like, there's Western Pennsylvania at the time was just totally dead. There was a big factory here, Volkswagen, it closed, and everything was just kind of all the steel mills were gone. And so I'm like, I'll go back to school. And everyone's like, you can be a college professor. So I got an MFA. It didn't go very well. But Jakiela's like, she wouldn't have paid for it. I paid for it with student loans, like just totally dumbass stuff. Didn't have a good experience there, and got a job as an over the road trucker when I was when I was done with it. So none of my education has done any until recently done any good for like getting a job or anything. I was always like the working class guy who's just like education's the way out of this, and then you go to do it, and everyone's like, "You're working class, get out of here." We don't need any more of you in this space.
Yeah. And then you mentioned working for an airline.
Yeah.
You guys both have like that blue collar kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many jobs, it's hard to count, but a lot of them waiting tables, which is, kind of what I did for the airlines too, except when things went wrong. Mostly it's just taking care of people, but yeah, and I still work as a caterer, and I catered one of my former students' weddings not too long ago, and it was a surprise to her and to the other former students that were at the wedding, because I'm like walking around going, would you like a meatball? And it was like I had like completely denigrated their degrees, because here I was, their professor person giving them meatballs, and I'm like, but I love to give people meatballs. I would rather give people meatballs 90% of the time. So yeah, so definitely that working class idea, life, it's everything, I think, in my work, and the way I see the world too.
Yeah. We're about at the 10-minute left limit. So before I ask any more bullshit questions and take up any more of your valuable reading time, uh, which one of you would volunteer to go first? I'd like you both to read something for us.
You want to read, Jay?
Oh, you go first.
Newman, you just won a big prize. Uh,
Yes, you
we
go
didn't even talk
first.
which Newman just won a Rattle poetry prize, which is a huge, huge deal. Like as a poet, I cannot stress to people that don't know poetry enough. This is like almost like winning an Oscar. It's like winning a Tony. Like, it's really respectful, but it like doesn't.
Right, right, right. It's not an Oscar. It's not. You're
It's
not
a
on the
huge
Today
deal.
Show afterwards. Yeah.
Go ahead. You're up, Newman.
No, I just it was awesome to win, but I mean, I don't also just I know that like luck is 90% of those 95% of those things. So I never enter contests. I just totally quit them. But I really like Rattle as a magazine, and basically you get a subscription for entering their contest. So I was like, that seemed worth it to me. And so that just luck is all that it was.
And it was a great poem too.
Ah,
But
thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to read a poem called the book of poems that's coming out on Roadside is kind of a lot of it's about working class writers and small press poets and people like that. And so there's a lot of longer poems that probably aren't appropriate to this for people like Fred Voss and Joan Job Smith and just kind of people I really admired when I first started writing who were still out in the world and not in the academy and writing about real things. But this is just a poem more about poetry. It's called Beautiful American Songs. He said, you really must read Neruda in Spanish. If I learned every language of every poet I love, I'd never have the time to read any poetry, and the hole in my head would be the size of the midday sun. Neruda sings to me the way Neruda sings to me. I like it, and it doesn't take a doctorate to know that. He said, English just doesn't capture the music. Okay, I understand that we're a country of race car drivers, football fans, crooked politicians, and rock and roll reporters, but tell me you don't love the sound of your own voice. Tell me that the word poontang isn't, in its beautiful American way, a song.
Uh,
Thanks.
as a poet that has tried to learn Spanish,
To
just
read
for
it.
that reason has failed.
Yes, yes, totally. I'm like, that is just an endless quest to start doing that.
But that was mine was Rogue Dalton. I wanted to learn because of Dalton.
Okay, I respect that.
Mhm.
Jakiela, you want to read one?
Sure. I'm just going to read this. It's a little micro essay that starts my new book with Roadside, and the book is called All Skate, but it's about um, all sorts of different midlife things, but a lot about work. And this is about we were talking about being a flight attendant, so this is from that. The art of the takeoff. My favorite thing about flying is takeoff. I love the rev of the engines, the feel of throttling down a runway at 600 miles an hour, the miracle of that. I love the way the landing gear lifts and locks into place, slam, dunk, no turning back. I love the magic carpet whoosh of air beneath my feet. I was a flight attendant for years, trained to pay attention to every sound and motion, the whir of wing flaps, the thrum of the hydraulics, the way ascent feels, the steep, smooth climb, the gravity defying beauty of that. I loved and still love every impossible thing about flight. I love the way something so heavy can become, in an instant, seemingly weightless. If something so huge can go airborne with the weight of all those human hearts wrapped up inside, anything is possible.
Hmm. I love hearing anything that's not poetry that's read and it sounds like poetry. It's like when I write novels, like some of my favorite writers are that way. You know, like that's uh anyway, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having
Thanks
us.